and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hey everybody, this is Connor Shank, and today you're listening to the Constant Sports Podcast. This show is committed to connecting you with other sports professionals because they say it's all about who you know. And today, Matt Silverman. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. And so today we're going to be talking with Matt, and he's the CEO and co-founder of Lionhearted Sports. And in this episode, we're going from marketing, agency life, day-to-day work stuff, sports business, and much more. So we're excited to get into it and kind of get it rolling here, Matt.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So I guess just to start, if so you've been with us Lionhearted Sports, and you had kind of an undergraduate degree in sports. So what made you kind of get into the sports business as a whole? What drew your attention to the industry?
Sure. Yeah. So to kind of give you a basic background on me, I grew up just like almost everyone, loving sports, playing everything. And, my uncle actually played in the MLB for a few years. He has 4 daughters, and they wouldn't want to travel from city to city to watch play. It was more like a chore to them at that point. So I had the opportunity, to hop on a plane at 7, 8, 9 years old and go from city to city, and really get that firsthand experience being in the locker room, in the dugout with these guys, as well as seeing the relationships between athletes and their representation.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, as you grow older, you start to hear more and more about guys going broke and just absolute horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
So my main goal with it all really was just to minimize that number and kind of bridge the gap between the athletes and post-retirement, kind of that what's next.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. And I feel like, I think there was a stat at one point, it was like 75% or some odd number of athletes go broke within 2.5 to 3 years, which is just staggering if you think about it. Like, that's just crazy,
It's unbelievable, but at the same time, their whole life, they've been catered to, right?
Right.
And once you're done, the attention's off.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, every athlete is a human being just like you and me, and everyone has aspirations off the field, whether it's giving back to charities all the way to, fixing up cars. We see it all. So ultimately, it's really tapping into those true passions off the field and being able to execute whatever, is in mind.
Right. And I think a lot of times it gets lost in translation when you're talking about athletes going broke, and people are like, oh, how could that happen? But
Right.
when you kind of think about it, they're like 19 to 18 to 22, and they're getting all this money, and then they're out of the league or whatnot at 26. And it's like, what are we doing here? I mean,
Right.
The kids at a certain age.
And more times than not, when an athlete does become professional, that's more money than they've ever seen in their life, and they've been thinking about for years how to spend it and what they're going to spend money on. And you combine that with poor representation, that could just turn into an absolute disaster in the end.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And that's why there's good characters as yourself and Chris over there that they're taking care of these guys. And so what kind of, as you got your is sports administration or management?
So I studied undergrad at the University of Arizona. Throughout my time there, I interned for a baseball agent, boutique agency. And at the end of the day, my whole mantra within it was acting like a sponge, absorbing as much information as I can. And essentially, I kind of considered it as a few extra credits within my undergrad, but I did that over the span of 4 years.
Got it.
While I was in school, I'd miss out on the fun times in college and whatnot to be able to execute this for a bigger goal at the end. And throughout that process, I was volunteering at an autograph show, and that's where I met my partner, Chris Beverly. And from there, we put 2 and 2 together, my background being in baseball, his background being in primarily NFL marketing and being able to do youth camps and whatnot. We put our minds together and realized, a lot of agents at the end of the day, they don't have time to handle the marketing, right? Especially around the time of free agency, the NFL draft, NBA draft, and MLB draft. There's a lot of things left on the table ultimately, and that's kind of where we come in and be able to execute, whatever's on mind.
Yeah, and I really kind of want to tap into kind of how you and Chris got started. So you said you kind of met at this card show and kind of hit it off, it sounds like, but kind of what went into saying, all right, like we're going to sit down here, we're going to start this agency, kind of, how'd you come up with a name? I'm interested in the business side of it and kind of how that all
Yeah,
came to be.
it's definitely a unique experience, and at the time, we were 20 and 21 when we met, both volunteering at an autograph show. And with that being said, when you volunteer at stuff like that, it's a lot of unboxing, boxing,
Yeah.
passing off baseballs and footballs to the guys, and ultimately just not the most enjoyable stuff. But we took the opportunity at hand, and we were walking around introducing ourselves to every agent, every athlete, passing along our information, asking questions, being vulnerable. And within that time, we ran into each other. And from there, we just got to talking and realized, we're able to do this thing. When it comes to the name, I think it was just something that came on as time went by, and it was just something that clicked, and that's something that we stand by, something that we always say from a recruiting standpoint are these guys lion-hearted individuals, right? In the representation world, our clients are just as much of a representation of us and and as we are of them. So at the end of the day, we have to be very careful on who we work with, right? So I feel like using the lion-hearted name ultimately to describe a characteristic is huge.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's beautiful marketing on your guys' part there, kind of connecting the name, kind of with the why and how you can fuse that with obviously your firm and then the athletes into one. So that's it's brilliant marketing. And then how long did it kind of take to get you guys going? What was it like getting your first clients? Kind of
Yeah, so that was back in 2018. I was still in college. He was living in College Station, Texas, where A&M is. And at that time, NIL wasn't around.
Right.
So of course, to avoid all conflicts of interest, we kind of just had to build our foundation from the ground, and try to build our foundation as strong as possible. And then we started actually 3 years ago, 2 days ago.
Okay.
So
congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We started, right at the brick of COVID.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons with it both. More times than not, companies, their first budget that they're going to cut out if needed is their marketing budget, right? But at the same time, flights were $30-$40
yeah.
in the country. So we took that opportunity, and got to travel, get face to face with people, clients, agents, financial advisors, and ultimately, credibility and capital is what carries you in this industry. So, and more so, not just who but who knows you.
Right.
So putting our best foot forward and being able to not just, talk over the phone with somebody, but really say, hey, let's sit down and meet. We'll be in your city in a week or two.
Yeah. And a lot of the viewers and listeners are, listening to whether it's like the marketing sponsorships, you have to find a way to kind of connect, your side with another side, right? So what are kind of some of your, without giving away, trade secrets, or what are kind of some of your, I guess, marketing pitches? Like do you guys have pitch decks, kind of that type of stuff when you guys do your marketing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's all situational at the end of the day, right? I could be dealing with a Coca-Cola all the way down to your local mom and pop soda company. At the end of the day, it's all situational. It's who we're working with, both from the representation side and the company or the brand side. But ultimately, it's once in a lifetime opportunity to grow with individuals that are passionate about your brand and ultimately want to grow with you. One of the things we tell our clients and the individuals that we work with is, even if you're going to buy something on Amazon, send us a picture beforehand. Send us a picture of what's in your fridge, right? If we're not in your city, let's see what's around your house, what you're already buying, and let's build an organic partnership with it. Because at the end of the day, we've seen way too many marketing opportunities just not be authentic, right?
Yeah.
You have guys drinking Pepsi or 7-Up that don't drink soda.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, how is this company or that brand going to see their return and authenticity sells?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And it always reminds me of the ad that went a few months, I don't know, it wasn't too recent, I guess, but it's like LeBron James drinking like Sprite or Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, do you think he's really, getting home after a game and knocking back a Mountain Dew? Like, I don't think so. But,
Yeah,
he has a bigger name. So it's like, that's a whole different story.
100%, 100%. A guy that spends over $1 million in
Yeah.
his own body isn't drinking,
No,
sugar.
there's no way. And then I guess as I'm pretty familiar with Lionhearted Sports and some of the events you've done, but for the viewers that might not be, what are some cool events that you've been a part of recently, or I guess just in the totality of the 3 years that you've executed on?
Yeah, yeah. So we've done a lot of cool things, whether it be on the marketing side or community relations, right?
Mhm.
So some things that come off the top of my head. There's a hurricane last year, 2 years ago in Texas, but it hit Louisiana just as hard, and it wasn't very broadcasted. One of the athletes we work alongside, Donovan Wilson on the Cowboys,
Mhm.
is from Shreveport, Louisiana. So we were able to set up a water drive there and basically supply the entire city with water.
Oh,
Uh, we,
wow.
we had a line about 15 blocks down the street, and we were just handing them out all day. Another thing that we do, or that we did that was awesome, was we hosted a youth camp last year in Houston for one of our clients on the Bengals. But with that, CBS picked up on it, right? And
Okay.
so it was a cool opportunity for them and their crew to kind of come down, and we were able to show off what we were able to do. And ultimately, that was featured on their show, Beyond Limits, which basically just explains NIL and how athletes, both at the professional level and in college, are showcasing what they're able to do off the field.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and that's sweet that they picked it up. And as you
Yeah,
guys are kind of getting do you guys you obviously you probably do, but when you have events, do you get certain sponsors like to sponsor the event?
yeah.
Kind of does that kind of the same process when you're doing that?
Yeah, sure. So again, it's all situational, right? Ultimately, it comes down to what our clients want to do. More times than not, they want to be able to give back to their communities and provide a free camp. And with that being said, not a lot of athletes want to put up their own money to put on a
Mhm.
free camp. So how do we do that, right? That all comes down to what our job is to go out there, call, ring, text everybody,
Yep.
LinkedIn, Instagram, however you want to use it, and just get in front of people to be able to sponsor an event like that to give back ultimately to their community as well.
Yeah, and I'm with there. And I guess where have you seen the most success personally with like the cold calling? Was it LinkedIn, calling, I guess, texting, emails, kind of, in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, we both know in the entertainment industry as a whole, your network is your net worth.
Mhm.
So I guess you could say really, I used that time in college to really try to build up my network, and post graduation, use that time to network traveling wise. And everyone knows somebody at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
So I mean, for me, I'm not really scared to ask questions if I need to. So I would say the most success we found is either word of mouth or reaching out to people on LinkedIn or Instagram. To
Mhm.
be honest
Got it. Yeah, no, and I think as you mentioned, the network being your net worth, and I think it's important as you kind of start meeting people, not, at the beginning being like, okay, like I'm gonna befriend that person because like, his buddy is the CEO of, I don't know, like Coke or something. It's like
with you. Right,
you're
right.
never gonna go anywhere doing that, right? It's gotta be authentic, as we were saying earlier. Like everything about it's gotta be authentic, even from your side. It's like, okay, we're gonna kind of foster this and maybe, down the line we can work something out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like in the world of relationship building, it's the people first and then the networking after, right?
Yep.
You connect with who you connect with.
Right. No, yeah, I echo that and I'm aligned with that 100%. And then as far as, kind of you starting your own business here with Chris, what are some of the hats that you kind of have been wearing? I'm sure a lot of them, but what's a hat that you weren't like, okay, that you're wearing that you're like, oh, I wasn't prepared, maybe for to be in this position wearing this hat.
Sure, sure. A lot goes into what we do, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're handling mostly everything off the field for these guys.
Hmm.
One thing necessarily that I didn't expect fully going in was the full-time commitment. It's not a
Right.
9 to 5, right? A lot of people, that work the 9 to 5 get to go home, relax at night,
Yeah.
watch whatever with their loved ones. This is a 24/7 thing. I wake up first thing in the morning and I'm making calls, or I'm answering calls that I missed being on
Mhm.
the West Coast, having people call from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the amount of work, but at the end of the day, I'm extremely passionate about what I do, so I can't really consider it work. It's more so the way I live my life.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I think that's specifically kind of in the sports industry where it's not your typical 9 to 5s. And I've talked about this, in the past kind of previous podcasts, but for the viewers, thinking I'm repeating myself, but I feel like it really isn't though. Like even if you work for a sports team and you're like in the office from 9 to 3, like the game starts at 6, so then you're there from 6 to 10. And then like in your case, it's a 24/7 thing. and I want to touch on the East Coast West Coast thing is real. I'm not a huge fan of the East Coast, the 3 hours ahead now for us at the West Coast. So
And
it's something. It's something.
it gets us up a little earlier, huh?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you got to get after it. And just kind of speaking of getting after it, I was taking a look kind of at your guys' website, and one thing stood out, and it was kind of like the concierge and slash public relations,
Yeah,
aspect of your company. And I think that's
absolutely.
kind of unique for just as I've been looking in different agencies and whatnot. So kind of maybe what is that? How does it work? Kind of give the viewers a background into that.
Yeah, pretty simple. At the end of the day, we all hear horror stories about athletes off the field all the time, right?
Mhm.
So to be able, and everyone takes trips in their off season and everyone likes to enjoy themselves. So ultimately being able to set them up for success wherever they're at.
Mhm.
Um, if somebody goes to Miami, we have transportation people, we have yacht people, we have Airbnbs out there. So just overall making sure that everything goes as smooth as possible for them
Right.
is a short synopsis of it all. And then, if things don't go as well or as planned, that's when the public relations and the crisis management comes in, correct?
Uh,
Yeah.
and I want to touch on the crisis management part a little bit, but
Yeah.
I guess how do you prepare your clients? So like for example, as we talked about, before camera, I worked with, United Athlete Sports, and I do the kind of like the contract evaluation. So we're thinking, like my best case scenario here, worst case scenario here, kind of planning that out. But I feel like on the off-field stuff where it's like the crisis management, you're usually not prepared for specific, instances. So how do you
No,
kind of keep up to date? How do you get prepared quickly for things like
sure.
that?
Sure. It's, I feel like more than anything, it's trying to avoid it ahead of time, right?
Mhm.
And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is really looking for those guys that are truly lion-hearted
Mhm.
people. When we find people like that, the worry's a little bit less on our end. And it's not so much, you could say, glorified babysitting anymore,
Mhm.
correct? It's uh, ultimately trusting the people that you're working with. But when things come up, right? It's nothing you can necessarily plan
Right.
on or plan for. It's really just ultimately trying to avoid those sorts of things. And how do you avoid it? It's again investing in the people that you work with.
Mhm.
Um, that's basically it.
Yeah. No, and especially I guess kind of that goes into the recruiting process. Like we're recruiting the
Yep.
right people. And it reminds me kind of like sports, right? Teams,
Yep.
colleges, like we're recruiting the right players so that we can, get A, B, C, and D out of them, going forward. And as we're talking kind of, I guess, about like personal traits or whatnot, what kind of skills have you acquired or that you've used, in your day-to-day life that, are valuable?
Yeah. I'd consider myself relentless at
Mhm.
the end of the day. And if you're not relentless in this industry and you're not striving for success all the time, you're just not going to make it, right?
Yep.
So I would say on top of just being relentless, being able to listen, being able to understand
Mm.
what's going on, right? Awareness, that's key, knowing where you're at. And I would say the last thing is really just trying to be a chameleon. That's the best
Yep.
way to describe it, right? You're going to be thrown into all sorts of situations in life, and just being able to adapt to where you're at is key, right?
Mhm. No, yeah, I agree with that there, especially adapting in different situations. Be like, okay, we're gonna, you know, for this athlete, we're gonna have to kind of do it this way. This athlete, we're gonna kind of do it this way. Being fluid and kind of working your way through that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you know how it goes.
Yeah, everyone's different, right? And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we're in the service-based industry and we're trying to provide the best service possible for these guys. And how we do that is making it as memorable and as personable as possible. So every
Mhm.
guy's different, and just being able to adapt to their situation, right? Being able to adapt to their life at home and being able to adapt to the things they like. All that is key in what we do.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important to keep in mind as you're going forward, and then kind of touching base on I guess the structure of it. So when you kind of, is there a certain aspect of the agency that I guess is kind of your calling card when you're recruiting and going forward with these athletes?
Yeah. And again, it's situational
Mhm.
and things change over time. But at the moment, it's my age being able to relate to these guys from
Mhm.
a personal level. Um, a lot of guys, have don't necessarily have that father figure in their life, but they necessarily don't want to have that father figure with their agent as well.
Mm.
So being able to relate to them, being able to understand the common trends that they're going through as a 25-year-old, being their age, if not younger than most of the guys that we work alongside.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would say that right now. If you ask me that in 5, 10 years, it's going to be different. But
Yep.
today, it's definitely being able to relate.
Yeah. No, being relatable is huge, especially kind of building that relationship with the clients. And I think turning them in, I don't always love the word like clients, right? Because, it's more
Right.
like, it's like close friends, brothers at some point where it's not like if you treat someone as your client, I feel like that's kind of like they're not like,
Exactly. And the way we word it really is the individuals that we work alongside,
yeah.
because we are working alongside these guys to make what they want happen to happen.
Mhm.
So yeah, 100%, 100%. I feel like the word client more times than not is a little impersonal,
Yeah.
right?
And I agree. It always just reminds me of like a lawyer talking about like one of their clients, and it's like gives me a weird vibe. But
Yeah.
speaking in the industry, you hear a lot of I guess horror stories, or just people. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of sharks out there. So,
Mhm.
kind of in your opinion, have you I guess have you seen that they take place, and kind of what are your thoughts on the industry as a whole?
Oh yeah. When I was getting into the industry myself and cold calling agents and financial advisors left and right, my answer that I got more times than not was just don't get into the industry. It's a
Yeah.
dirty, dirty industry, and at the end of the day, everyone's hungry, right?
Mhm.
And everyone more times than not, people play dirty. So it's really about just staying true to who you are. Um, but yeah, to answer your question, there's been some horror stories without a doubt, and it's definitely not the beginning or the last of it.
Yeah, and I've seen that a little bit just in my short time here, but I guess, like I said, without getting too personal, is there like do you guys sign contracts? Like, how does the marketing side work? Is it like would you sign a contract with an individual you're working with, or is it more just like event based, or
Yeah,
yeah.
it's whatever they want, right?
Mhm.
If it's going to be a situation as in they just want us to help out with their youth camps every year.
Mhm.
Um, no, I mean at that point, we'll send something over once that time is coming,
Mhm.
basically just to say, yeah, we're going to help you run it here.
Right.
When we work with individuals on an exclusive level, yeah, there are contracts involved.
Yeah. That's I've always just kind of been curious as far as the marketing side, because obviously in any pro league, there's a CBA, right? There's the
Yep.
SRAs, and so it's kind of like structured. And then I feel like on the marketing side, it's kind of a little bit more fluid. It's not
Right.
super contract heavy.
Well, it's so new. It's so
Yeah.
new, right? More times than not, agents are a full service agency and
Hmm.
they're able to provide everything. The whole marketing agent side of things have really been, I feel like, newer over the past couple of years.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, especially with the NIL and that whole thing. I feel like it's just opened up an
yeah,
entire new avenue, as you've probably seen.
yeah, yeah.
And then I was curious as I was kind of looking through the website and different events you've hosted, as far as NFL, NBA, MLB. Have you seen certain events or certain players from those leagues kind of have not better events, but like a little bit more traction? I was just curious, like if if an NFL player has one opposed to like an NBA player, like do you see much going either way?
Yeah, not really, to be honest with you. More times than not, when we put on an event such as a youth camp, we'll
Mhm.
max it out at 100, individuals.
Oh, got
Um,
it.
but from the sense of people signing up, yeah, we've seen camps sell out in one day. We've seen camps take a week or two to sell out. But more times than not, we put that cap on to make sure that every individual is being seen and being heard.
Right. And is that something that you kind of learned over time where you started putting caps on camps, or is that kind of something you figured out early? Like, okay, we're gonna have to put a limit
Sure.
to this before it gets out of hand.
Sure. Yeah. To answer that, not really. We kind of picked up on it before we did them. Again, going to crisis management, it's like how do we avoid these situations? And that was something that we talked about pretty early on. And again, just being able to do our homework and studying our colleagues and what they've been able to accomplish over the past couple of years, it gave us a pretty good idea and structure on how to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And then as kind of, as you mentioned, structure and kind of going forward, how do you, I guess, prepare, as we talked about days, 20, your work days are 24/7, they're fluid, it's always moving and
Yeah.
grooving. So how do you kind of prepare for the unknown? A lot of people that are about to get into the industry are like, I always hear that it's 24/7 and I got to do this and that, and it's like unknown. So how do you prepare for what I like to call the unknown going forward?
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, just believing in yourself, believing in what you're doing. You hear more times than not that people that find success are the people that just tough it out.
Mhm.
And again, it's a tough industry. I've learned what I want to do by doing the things I didn't want to do and don't want to do, right?
Mhm.
I worked the grueling jobs. I've worked the jobs where I'm not getting home till 1, 2 a.m. to be able to ultimately put myself in this position, right?
Mhm.
So I guess figuring out what you don't want to do with that, kind of finding your forte within the industry can make it a lot easier as well and kind of clear up that unknown.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the people that don't take risks are the people that aren't going to take risks,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. You're not going to go,
Be able
not going to grow.
yeah, you need to be able to take those risks to be able to see that growth.
Mhm.
Um, so just believing in yourself at the end of the day, it's life, right? Things are going to pop up in your personal life as well, in your work life, that you're just not prepared for. But as long as you stay true to who you are and your core values, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm 100% aligned with you there. Um, what's kind of next for Lionhearted Sports? You guys have some events coming up, like, is it
Yeah.
busy season for for your agency? Kind of what's next?
Yeah, so this would definitely, I would say year round is pretty busy, but this is
Mhm.
definitely considered our busy time. We were planning about 5 to 6 youth camps this summer, which we're extremely pumped about, as well as just things that we're already planning right now,
Mhm.
going into the NFL season next year. I don't want to give too much away,
Of course, yeah.
of course, until the papers are signed, but
Yep.
definitely be on the lookout. There's some big things coming.
Yeah, no, yeah, I didn't mean to back you up in a corner there and
No,
share
you're good.
details, but yeah,
You're good.
we'll keep the listeners on edge there and keep them waiting for the NFL season to roll around. But as you begin these events, as you said, kind of the busy season, how long in advance are we preparing for these events? Is this like last summer you've been prepping for them? Is it 6 months out? What does that
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, so the window looks around, the 3 to 6 month mark.
Mhm.
We first have to figure out the when and where and the
Yep.
why, more importantly. More times than not, one of the things we help out with as well is nonprofit development, right?
Mhm.
So it kind of all ties in together at the end of the day. So figuring out the when, where, why. Do you want to do it in your hometown? Do you want to do it in the city that you're playing in? Do you want to do both? And then with that as well, we have to have enough time, of course, to um, reach out to people and build those sponsorship packages as well. So
Yep.
I would say about the 3 to 6 month mark.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think especially that is a good enough time to give the brands and you kind of time to work together, especially for the sponsorship side, where if it's, last minute, you're trying to think of deliverables and then it's like, it's just, I think a lot of it needs to be prepared in advance, as you
Right.
know, and for the listeners that are just kind of, trying to get into the event space. I think events, everyone just shows up to an event like, oh man, look at this. Like, oh, my son's, Nuggets game tonight. Like this event's awesome. And it's like, there's so much went into that with the execution of the sponsors, the game day stuff. So just keeping
Right.
that in mind, as you're
And,
getting into
and
those.
and a lot of people from the outside looking in think that this is such a glorified job, but at the end of the day, there's more times than not a ton of work being put in the back
Yep.
end of things and behind the scenes where nobody hears about, nobody sees about, and they'll never know.
Yep.
Um, but it's what keeps us going. It's
Yeah.
what keeps us going. Without it, you can't operate.
Oh yeah, no, and you need all that, and you need it's kind of like the dirty work as you talked about in the beginning. It's like back, getting boxes ready and getting things ready. Whereas as the camp comes down, you're getting registration forms that there's people are signing, not physicals, but in case they get hurt, you got all that stuff. You got to get the field space.
Right.
It's not just like, oh yeah, show up. Here we go.
Right.
Let's get it going.
No, another thing that's huge in that space is insurance policies, right? What if a
Mm,
kid gets hurt at your camp?
right.
Just things people don't necessarily think about that just needs to be taken care of. If you're doing it at a high school, you have to be able to get in touch with the principal or the athletic director and
Yeah.
be able to put that space out.
Right.
So it's the smallest little details that you never hear about, never see,
Mhm.
um, but it's essential.
Yeah, well, you can't just show up with 200 kids at the local high school and start running routes. It doesn't work like that,
Right,
you know.
right.
As you've moved forward in your career, have you attended like networking conferences, networking fairs, networking groups? Like, are there certain things that you've done to kind of, I guess, grow that side of your skill base?
Sure. Not necessarily, I try to be in whatever city that the Super Bowl's in,
Yeah.
to be able to just network with my people. Again, this is such an interesting market, and there's only
Mhm.
so many people that want to in it and to understand it.
Right.
But if you know of any networking groups in the area, please
Yeah.
let me
No, yeah,
interested.
for sure. Yeah. We'll get one going. But I was just curious lastly, kind of before we finish off here, is as you stay up to date in the industry, are you looking at other, maybe players camps that they've done? Are you looking at different, you're on Twitter trying to get sports related news? Kind of how do you stay up to date with all things, your individual players that you work with and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just doing your homework, right?
Mhm.
You had homework growing up in school and everything like that, and it's the same thing with this. It's being able to study other companies and where they found success. It's studying individuals and athletes, what they like, what they don't like,
Mhm.
ultimately to provide the best experience for them off the field.
Right. And I also think as you're doing your homework and studying, there's also all sorts of marketing trends and those types
Right,
of things that I feel like people, when they like want to be in like either athlete marketing or marketing, like there's a whole numbers game to it where it's, how many impressions, how many eyeballs are seeing this, how can that be turned into dollars that
right,
you got to
right.
take into account,
Absolutely, absolutely. How many engagements
Right.
post could get? How many
Hmm.
engagements, even a commercial, anything along those lines? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and then as we go forward, what are some or what is a piece of advice that you would like to give, yourself, maybe freshman in college, just graduating high school, getting into college that you would find helpful?
Man, just stay true to who you are at the end of the day, and be the person that you needed when you were younger, to
Mhm.
whatever capacity it's at. We tell all of our guys that at the end of the day, everyone needs a little bit of something. So it's
Mhm.
just figuring out what you necessarily need and how to provide that to others.
Yeah, no, no, I love that. And as we kind of close here, we'll give you the floor, Matt, and you can promote any events, any athletes. I got obviously the company, maybe some of how people can get connected with you, things like that. So we'll just kind of give you the floor to close out here.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys want to stay connected with me, follow me on Instagram, Matt Silverman _. You can follow Lionhearted Sports as well, all one word. But yeah, stay tuned. We got some big things coming up here, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to watching and kind of seeing your success as you guys grow. And that's one of the things I love about the industry, and especially kind of starting this is, being able to connect with people. And then as we go forward, seeing the cool things, 6, 7 months when I see Lionhearted Sports on ESPN, I'm like, hey, Matt was on the podcast, now like he's doing all this cool stuff. So I think that's awesome.
There's nothing better than seeing your people succeed, man. There's
Right.
nothing better. So I second that 100%. Now I look forward to seeing your success in the future as well, Connor.
Oh yeah, appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for meeting up with us today, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. And this has been another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. And today you met and know Matt Silverman, so we're looking forward to following him. And we'll be dropping this on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. And we're looking forward to stay connected and grow together. So thanks again, Matt.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Adios. See ya.